Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. I'm Paul Kretschmer. On today's broadcast, we'll be speaking with someone who was once an astrologer, but who found the Christian faith and now considers astrology and those who are adherents to it as a mission field for Jesus Christ. Here's my guest on today's WIHS Journal.
Yes, I'm Marcia Montenegro, and I work in a Christian ministry, which I founded, Christian Answers for the New Age. I operate as a missionary with a mission agency, Fellowship International Mission in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and supported by several churches and individuals.
How long have you been doing this then, Marcia?
Full-time, 22 years. And prior to that, I was doing it sort of unofficially, part-time. I wasn't supported. I was working, other jobs and kind of doing it on the side, but I had the name Christian Answers for the New Age, and I was speaking and writing. So that happened 4 years before I went full-time.
Could you explain for listeners briefly why you started the ministry that you began even before you made the connection that you've been ministering under for the past number of years?
Sure. I was in what's called the New Age for many years. Before I trusted in Christ, I was a professional astrologer. I was involved in Zen Buddhism. I did Eastern meditation. I had tarot cards. My friends were psychics, astrologers, mediums, etc. And I was in that world for a long time. No interest in being a Christian, and the Lord intervened, and I encountered the true Jesus Christ and was born again. And within a short period of time after that, people in churches wanted to hear my story of what the Lord had done, or they wanted to know about the New Age. And so I started just giving little talks here and there, and over a period of time, several people suggested to me, including my missions pastor, that I consider going full-time. And at this point, I was doing quite a lot of talks, even though I was working in an office. And so over the period of a year, I prayed about it, and the Lord was very clear that He showed me there was a need for this ministry. And so I ended up going full-time.
Is it a result of the backdrop of your life that one of the words that I see here connected with you is Marcia, the ex-astrologer?
Yeah, that's my email address, which actually I wasn't going to make that a permanent email, but it's a long story, and it's ended up as my email address. So that's why it's called the ex-astrologer.
I have found in my own life recently, no matter where I go, I see businesses where astrology is undertaken. One is only a couple of miles up the road from where I'm sitting right now, and it's been there for quite a long time now. Have you seen that kind of business more popular or more evident recently, or has it always been there, but perhaps because of the tenor of times right now, people like me are perhaps noticing it more than we used to?
I think that it has always been at a pretty high interest. Polls have shown over the past number of years, I think maybe at least 10 or 15 years, that 30 to 33% of the population in the United States believe in astrology. This would probably include a lot of people who read their horoscope columns in the newspaper and in magazines. And I do want to make an important distinction between people who have kind of storefront businesses, whether they're an astrologer or a psychic, and they advertise and they know a little bit, but they're actually not really that knowledgeable usually, and they tend to be, and I'm not trying to sound mean or anything, but they kind of tend to be the scam artists. And then the other side of the coin are the people who take it very seriously. They see themselves as professionals. They feel they're helping people, and they usually have a spiritual belief system that's attached to astrology. And this is what I was involved in. This is like what the New Agers are in or what professional astrologers are in. They totally believe in it, and they take it seriously. So I think, what most people see are maybe the storefront things, the storefront sign type people. I'm not sure, but usually the professional astrologers don't advertise like that.
How do people find where they are or that they are in a given area and find out how to approach them then?
Well, it's a good question. Usually, it can be different ways. Of course, it's going to be word of mouth once you do get clients. But it also can be where you are in places where people are taking classes that are, might be astrology, past life regression, numerology. Different people are there with those interests, and they find out that you're studying astrology, and so maybe they ask if you can do their chart. Once you get a few clients, if you're good at it, it tends to spread by word of mouth. So a lot depends on the kind of people that you're around. And then I had business cards, and I would give them out to people that I thought would be interested. But most of my business came word of mouth, but I also was an astrology teacher. So, of course, I was known that way, and so my students would tell other people about me who they thought were interested in seeing an astrologer. So I think there are different ways that it works, but it's just contacts you have.
Back in that day for you, would you have considered yourself like some other people nowadays consider themselves to be spiritual but not religious?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes. I felt that I was very spiritual. I felt I was on a spiritual path, and that I was going along this path in a very clear, determined way, and that I was kind of gathering more and more knowledge and coming across more and more teachers or people that I could learn from and books I could learn from. And it all seemed to fall into place. It seemed like things would connect and lead me to other things that I thought were, of course, part of my spiritual path. So it tends to, when you're going in that direction and you're into those kind of ideas, things like that happen, and things kind of fall in place for you, and so you feel that this is part of your purpose. This is your life. I used to say that astrology was my calling.
I have heard people within the Christian faith say that they believe that people who practice astrology, whether they are amateurs or professionals, are either followers of Satan or at least are doing Satan's work, even if they don't necessarily recognize that as such. What's your perspective on this, having been both an astrologer as well as a Christian ministry worker in the field, so to speak? Right.
Well, yes. Astrologers, it would probably be very hard to find an astrologer who believed in Satan. I certainly didn't believe in Satan. And I had gone to church growing up, various churches, so I had encountered, the idea of Satan. But I did not believe in Satan, and I don't think any of my astrologer friends believed in Satan. But I actually was told that a couple of times by people when I was an astrologer, and I got really angry because, my response was, well, I don't even believe in Satan, so how can I be serving Satan? That was my thinking. But of course, I believe that now as a Christian, that astrology is from the enemy. I think it's not just a false system, but it's an evil system. And we know that the enemy is crafty. And so astrology is very, very seductive. I still, to this day, have Christians who have either come out of astrology or have had an interest in it, having a hard time to break away from it, even as a Christian. And that's because it is so seductive. There's so much of it that seems true, and it's very it's fascinating in its own way because it's very complex and it has all these moving parts that connect. And so if you're the kind of person that likes to analyze and see things fit together, plus you feel that you're getting all this kind of inside information, that's a very powerful seduction. So I think it's one of the more seductive types of occult activities. And of course, it's completely condemned as divination in the Bible, especially at the end of Isaiah 47. But it is a form of divination, occult divination, and God, denounces it. These, like other forms of divination, they were part of the practices of people that were connecting to the pagan gods. That was how they believed. They could get messages from the gods, or somehow the gods were sending the messages through these position of the planets. Of course, at the time they didn't know they were planets. They thought of them as stars. But it's all a part of, it was tied in to the worship of false gods. So it's definitely an evil system.
Taking that as a point to turn in our conversation then, what can you tell me and listeners about what is the functions within the ministry that you perform at the current time that knows that and deals with it in terms of how you interact with people, and what kind of services are you performing for them, or assistance are you bringing to them that they might not otherwise encounter if it were not for a believer such as yourself?
Okay. Well, I have a twofold purpose in my ministry. One is to reach out to people who are in the New Age or New Age beliefs like I was, including astrology or maybe tarot cards or just generally New Age beliefs, is to reach out to them, to respond to them in order to share the gospel and share the true Jesus Christ. Because a lot of them will believe in Jesus, but it's not the Jesus of the Bible. And the other purpose of the ministry is to educate Christians on what the New Age is, how to recognize it, where we see it in the culture, and what are the dangers of it, and what does God say about it. And the New Age actually has been mainstreaming since I came out of it. It has grown tremendously and been mainstreaming in the culture. So a lot of my time is spent tracking that and writing on it. So I do a lot of writing. I have 2 published books. I have a number of articles that have been published in Christian publications. And I've spoken in 30 states at churches, retreats, women's retreats, youth groups, etc. over the years. So I reach out to people in different ways. I've also done some outreaches that were specifically, targeting unbelievers. And a lot of times people come across my website and they will then email me and ask me questions. I actually have a large number of people interacting with me on Facebook, both Christians and non-Christians. And so I get a lot of private messages, questions from both of those groups. And many of them are maybe wanting to know about Jesus, or maybe they're wanting to know why I left astrology. They don't understand why I would leave it, because they see it as something that's helpful to people. So I actually engage with a lot of people online, probably much more than I used to, because, of course, when I started off in this ministry, there weren't that many people on the computer, and the Internet wasn't at all what it is today.
I will certainly enjoy following up on what you've had to share, Marcia.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Paul. I really enjoyed this opportunity to share about this ministry.
My thanks once again to my guest, Marcia Montenegro, for today's WIHS Journal. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretschmer on the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from WIHS.